you believe in the supernatural?
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama, for free for a limited time at spiritblade.com.
Well, my editing skills are crap. But can the same thing be said about Star Trek Beyond? Stick around and find out. Womp, 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 womp. Womp, 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 womp. All right, we're done with that. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of, what is this called? Star Trek Beyond. The USS Enterprise crew explores the furthest reaches of uncharted space, where they encounter a new, ruthless enemy who puts them and everything the Federation stands for to the test. That's IMDb's basic description. There's one that's a little bit better that actually tells you something below it. The first leg of the USS Enterprise's 5-year mission takes them into uncharted territory. There, the Enterprise is nearly destroyed and strands Kirk and his crew on a remote planet with no means of communication. Kirk must then work with the elements to reunite his crew and get back to Earth. So basically, it's a new, horrible threat, more destructive than anything they've encountered, right? You have to do that with each successive story. They have to figure out who this strange new enemy is and how to stop him. It feels in many ways like an episode of Star Trek. You know, it's the alien of the week, and with their own shtick and gimmick, you know, which in this case is like swarming nanite tech that they are just like have no defenses for, you know. I enjoyed the first two reboot movies, and both the action and the characterization that they brought to the Star Trek franchise. I liked that there was more internal and relational conflict in the cast than we'd really seen regularly in Star Trek before. Tonally, it was somewhere between the whacked out dysfunction of Farscape and those characters, butting heads with each other and kind of the humor there, and then the darkly sober Battlestar Galactica. It was somewhere, I felt like, right in the middle of those first two movies. This movie felt kind of like a Marvel movie to me. It definitely felt like it was written, as far as I know, by different people. Simon Pegg, who plays Scotty, was a co-writer on this movie, and just the dialogue, it just felt like a different type of script. It was much more jokey, and it had strong characters like you would have in a Marvel movie that kind of humorously butt heads throughout the movie, but not in a really serious way are they really, fighting. At least not in a serious way that you and I could relate to. Although I will say that the danger in this movie felt more real than any MCU Marvel movie, except maybe the first Iron Man. So I did appreciate that. If you don't know, I don't really enjoy most of the Marvel movies these days. I don't think they're bad experiences for me. They're just very kind of forgettable and samey, So I felt in many ways that I had a similar experience with this movie. Like I said, it felt much more like an episode of Star Trek. Characters did have arcs within this episode, but they didn't seem to be in a different place significantly than when the movie started, I mean, there was, there'd be like one character to be like, I'm leaning this way with my life, and by the end of the episode, they're not leaning that way, so, but it was something that was presented that we didn't know about their character. Kirk, I won't spoil it, but Kirk is considering something that will change the course of his career, and by the end of the movie, I'm not going to spoil it, but maybe I already did. But anyway, it just felt like kind of more easily encapsulated than the first two movies. I felt like the characters in the first two movies, the relationships with each other, especially with characters like Kirk and Spock, they were in kind of different places, especially from the beginning of the second movie to the end of the second movie. And then you also had relationships like the Uhura-Spock relationship that were kind of changing and growing, and we were seeing more of that, and this... Yeah, there was some changes introduced at the beginning that were all wrapped up and never minded at the end of the movie. So I missed those kinds of arcs that changed the status quo by the end of the movie from the first two. I really missed that happening in this one. I didn't feel like the status quo was really changed at all. And I don't want to say at all. I'm sure we could nitpick and find things that were changed, but it just, compared to the first two, the status quo was not changed noticeably to me. Let's see, the tone was overall more fun, and jokey, which I'm not a big fan of. I think that's probably going to appeal to more people because of that, for injecting that kind of jokiness. But as someone who rarely thinks jokes in movies are funny, even in comedies, it's a weird type of comedy that actually makes me laugh, repeatedly. And I prefer heavy drama mixed in with my sci-fi action, not just like a bunch of punchlines, and stuff like that. So this experience, for someone like me, or I'll just say for me, left almost no impact as I was leaving the theater and reflecting on it. It's not a bad story for my tastes, and it became more compelling in the last 30 minutes, but it wasn't scratching the itch for me that the first two movies did. Regarding the cast and their performances there, it was a solid cast. I wish they'd been given more weighty stuff to work with. It seemed like a case of great performers, once again, who didn't seem stretched at all. Like, a number of them had opportunity to be stretched a bit in the first two movies. I just didn't sense them really working their acting muscles in the same way as the first two movies. As far as stunts and visuals go, well, I am cursed. If you've been watching these videos or listening to the podcast, you know this already. I'm cursed with an eye that just picks out CG. I wish it wasn't the case, but CG just typically looks really CG-ish to me, especially when you're trying to make something organic look convincing with CG. I do better with objects, cars, tables, things like that are not weird moving creatures. There's an opening scene in this movie that involves Kirk interacting with some talking CG aliens, and it put me frickin' right back in the diner of that Star Wars prequel. I think it was with Obi-Wan talking to a tennis ball or something. I can't remember who, but it just, to my eyes, it just looks like a fancy cartoon, and that's a bummer. But hopefully you'll fare better. I wish that they would have gotten Henson's Creature Shop instead to make those non-humanoid shaped aliens that they interact with. That would have been really cool. But luckily, most aliens after that opening scene were makeup jobs that looked really cool and intricate. There's possibly more action and stunts in this movie than in previous Star Trek movies, but I was a bit numb to it, as I said, because the nature of the drama was just, it was more jokey and more kind of surface level and humorous and stuff. Even so, the action looks really cool, and there's some crazy destruction with accompanying with stunt work that goes along with it, that made one sequence particularly devastating to watch. I was just like, whoa, seeing what they were doing. So that was really cool. As far as relevance, are there any worthwhile themes or spiritual concepts or moral or philosophical ideas being expressed that might stimulate or trigger worthwhile thought or conversation during or after watching this movie? I don't know. Not for me, not compared to the previous two. I felt like there were nuggets in the previous two that kind of stood out to me. Not so much in this movie. It was much more optimistic and had an optimistic kind of humanist vibe compared to previous movies. Not optimistic and humanistic and utopian in the sense that the TV shows largely were, but still more optimistic and humanistic, I think, in its vibe than the previous two movies. Unity is highly valued as a virtue in this movie, as it should be biblically as well, provided we're unified around the right things. But I don't think they were making a blanket statement that unity no matter what is good. I didn't feel like that was coming out of this movie. So it's not necessarily a purely humanist view. Death was responded to, I thought, in a fairly humanist way by a commitment by the characters who were still living to live more purposefully with the time that they have left. But there's no hope that's offered for those who have died, and that's very rare that you're going to find that in the movie outside of the weird and nebulous, well, they're in a better place. Well, what the crap does that mean? Or they're looking down on us. Well, why should we think that, They just really kind of left any thought of an afterlife alone, and it was more about what the survivors were feeling in light of the death of someone that they cared about. The controversial, I put in quotes, revelation that Sulu is gay in this movie was so brief, and it was so subtle that as I watched it, I heard the controversy beforehand, and then I watched the scene, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so brief and so subtle, it could almost be interpreted as Sulu meeting up with his brother who is helping to take care of, or Sulu's helping to take care of his brother's daughter. They walk away, they exchange a look that's, fairly close, and they're kind of arms around each other's backs, and I've seen some brothers that are physically affectionate in that way, so I mean, It was so subtle. It was just kind of like a blip on the political agenda radar. So not much to comment on compared to the more heavy-handed politics of other stories. I don't think it really added to the character one way or the other, and neither did it come across as preachy. It was just an unusual blip. Anyway, I have no idea what your tastes are, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Pater! Just wait for Redbox on this one. It's a nice time filler, but pretty forgettable in terms of both the themes involved in it and the story itself. You're going to enjoy it for what it is, but wait until, you've got some time to kill at home. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of sci-fi, action, and violence. Those are my thoughts. Would love to get yours in the comments below. Visit spiritblade.com to get the Legacy Edition of our Spirit Blade audio drama for free, and check out the other things that we've got for you there as well. That's a fun and free and easy way to support this channel. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you like this video and want to share it with other people and want more videos like it. Then those are the things that you're supposed to do, I guess. Oh yeah, and then go to christiangeekcentral.com. Christian, what is it called? christiangeekcentral.com for a ton more content and community. I hope you join us there soon as we continue. I'm going to find the button in advance this time to geek out and seek the truth.
The future, a world where the quest for truth has ended.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Mr. Vandarian?
Surprise! The Shader will bring hell to Earth for thousands of years. Shock Division, kill them all!
The trilogy is complete. Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama. For a limited time, download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade for free at spiritblade.com.